Welcome back to the All About You podcast. Today my guest is Bruno and we are talking about his experience and passions for tall ships. Bruno, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Bruno, I have to admit I know absolutely nothing about tall ships. So I'm going to put this in the category as an educational podcast for me, if not everybody else.
That's fine. I didn't know anything about tall ships before I saw some.
So let's go right back to the beginning then. So how did your passion for tall ships begin?
I'm French and my hometown is Brest in Brittany, which is a big harbour that effectively has had tall ship meetings since the 90s. And effectively, I went to these meetings because it was basically 4 days in the harbour of party with lots of ships around. And I thought, I'd quite like to sail on one of those one day. And I had the opportunity to do it for an afternoon once a few years later. Well, a few years after I did the first tall ship meeting in my hometown. I had the opportunity to sail on a tall ship for an afternoon and say, yeah, I really want to do that again.
So how old were you when you discovered this first tall ship meeting? Okay.
Early 20s. First time I sailed on a tall ship, I was at university at the time. Just about to get into the workforce, basically. And yeah, so 23, 24-ish.
You discovered these tall ship meetings in your hometown, so that really was like quite amazing.
Basically, my hometown, it's a harbour in a bit the same way as a place like Portsmouth in the UK would be a harbour. It's a military, pleasure, commercial harbour. And every time you go down to the harbour, you would always see, some sailing ships, some military ships, a bit of everything. And then when they put those meetings together, you end up there and you've got hundreds of those large sailing ships, which are something else compared to your normal little yachts you might have in your little harbour in Brittany. Obviously, because they make it as a big party over 4 days. Well, the usual thing you've got with one of those things, all sorts of people selling things, all sorts of music. So it is a big party for the whole town for 4 days. So at that point, you can usually visit some of the ships while they're at the quay. And yeah, at that point you start looking at them and you're like, wow, that's large, that's impressive. I'd like to sail on one of them.
So it sparked your imagination then?
It sparked my imagination, and I thought, I'm going to enter the workforce. There's no way I'm going to have the time to do any of that thing. Till the next tall ship meeting, when I was there was a little stand with a guy selling his book on how to sail on tall ships because he had been doing it, and I bought a copy. That stayed in my home gathering dust for a couple of years until I opened it and said, no, I want to do that for my holidays now. Let's find one. And that's what I did. So the book was more a guide on how to sail on tall ships. It presented a lot of ships and how to contact them, what you could expect to have. And basically, this being a French book, the first half was all French ships, and then it has the second half that was international ships. And it had a little blurb on each of them. And effectively, I started looking through this and thought, like this, don't like this, don't like this. And eventually I settled on a Norwegian ship. One, because I wanted an international ship, and second, because it had a very good review. So that's what I did.
How does this work then? You approach the people who are crewing the ship and you pay to spend a week on the ship?
Yeah, basically every one of those ships, the ones you can travel on, typically will have a web page where you can look at what travel options you have, the cruises they have, which basically the deal is they tend to have a season where they take passengers, typically the summer, and they have a schedule where they travel from one harbour to another. So they tell you the schedule, and you can book a berth for a leg of the travel, several legs, and depending on the journey, one leg may be 3 days, sometimes maybe 2 weeks. It depends what they're doing. And the first time I went, I thought, I don't know if I like it, so I'll choose one of the shorter legs, and eventually I did a week on the ship. But yeah, it completely depends on their journey that year.
I'm not imagining you're going to be a guest on this ship with a pina colada in one hand and a book in the other. You're going to be working on board this ship?
Well, there are a few ships where you can be a passenger with a pina colada in your hand. Those ships are the ones that tend to run in the Caribbean, and that tend to be very expensive. The ones that are within the budget of someone just out of university starting their first job are not in that category. And yes, for those ships, you join as a trainee, which basically means that you're a know-nothing deckhand.
Right, so it's a nice way of saying you're completely green and you wouldn't have a clue what you're doing.
Exactly. They will teach you. And concerning sailing on those ships, a lot of the work consists in pulling on some ropes or letting go of some of the ropes. What you need to know to be useful is not very complicated. What you need to know to understand how the ship sail is a lot more complex, but effectively they can do with deckhands. And it's also varied depending on the type of ship, and especially depending on the rigging of the ship. So the way, the type of sails it has. The type of ships I sailed on most are what you call full rigged ships. So they are basically like the Curtis Hunk, all clipper ships with square sails that were meant to go around the world following the trade winds. And the reason why they are very good for training is because they require quite a few deckhands to maneuver, and most of that work is not pulling on ropes. More modern ships, like if you go into a harbour today and you see all the little yachts, they all have what we call Latin sails, which is a different type of rigging, which requires a very minimal crew. A small yacht, one person can sail it on their own, whereas as soon as you got a square rigging, you need more people, because just unfolding the sail and all that sort of things takes more hands. So they're very good for training because they need people, and they can use any level of skill.
So you didn't really need any previous experience, but I should imagine you need to be pretty fit and agile. Was it like you were in your early 20s, but were the other trainee passengers, were they quite young?
Well, they were all ages, basically.
So I'm imagining this is actually quite hard work.
It is hard work, but you never do it on your own. So effectively, I've never been very athletic my whole life, and especially not when I was in my early 20s working in software engineering. You don't need to be athletic to work in software engineering and type on a keyboard. And in terms of age, we had people, it went from teenagers to people in their 70s.
Oh, wow.
So it was very wide-ranging. And it helps if you've got a bit of strength, but it's not necessary for everything. So same again, whatever your level of fitness, whatever your level of skill, there will be a job for you to do.
As well as learning about sailing, I guess, you're all going to muck in with the cooking, the food preparation, keeping the boat sort of clean, and just general day-to-day ticking over when you've got a group of people 24/7 on a boat. There's a lot that needs to be done.
Oh, absolutely. And effectively, so each ship has a different schedule, but the one I sailed on, so a Norwegian ship called Sørlandet, you are separated in 3 watches. So you're 4 hours on deck, 8 hours off, which means that if you've got the 8 to 12 watch, you're on deck 8 in the morning to 12 in the evening, 8 in the evening to 12 at night. The one I like best is the 12 to 4 because it's right in the middle of the night and the ship is so quiet at night. But effectively, this is when you're on deck. Occasionally, you get to do a special watch for the day. And every day there's a few of the people who are on special watch duty. They're taken away from the deck watch and they have help with other tasks. And particularly, there's the kitchen watch, where you're going to help with peeling potatoes, with serving tea, with making sure that everybody is cared for. Because obviously, people need to eat, people need to drink, and every time you go to a change of watch, they'll bring some drinks up to get the new watch prepared and to get the old watch off with a hot drink, because it can sometimes be a bit chilly on deck, even in summer.
But just going back to these watches, you're not physically sailing through the night, are you, or are you?
You are.
You are?
So say you're sailing from Aarhus in Denmark to St. Petersburg, which I've done once. It's going to be a full week worth of sailing, and you don't stop.
Right, so you
you do sail through the night.
See, I got this impression you wouldn't, especially with trainees on board.
So effectively, there's a lot of security rules every time. But effectively, when you have trainees on board, they're never on their own. Every watch is composed of 4 or 5 people from the permanent crew and then trainees. And yeah, the very first thing they will do before you even sail is to go through standard security stuff and all that sort of things. But effectively, when you're sailing, there's a few rules when you're on deck to make sure that you don't do something stupid, or when the weather is okay, that's fine. You can there's no problem. It starts getting a bit iffy when you're in heavy weather. You need to know where to stand. Effectively, most of the time you just need to not be in the way if you're not doing anything, which can be quite difficult on a crowded ship. For most things on deck, there's rarely, even at night. I mean, I wouldn't say it's without risk, but it's fairly well controlled. But yeah, you will sail the ship at night. Obviously, at night they try not to do some of the more complex maneuvers that require people to climb in the rigging and that sort of things, because obviously it's easier to climb in the rigging if you see what you're doing. It sails through the night. So
how many permanent crew were there on your ship when you went, and how many trainees?
My ship is quite a big one. It's 65 meters long, so it's about the size of the Cul-de-sac.
I was going to say, that sounds enormous.
It is quite
wow.
big. Three masts, the size of the Cul-de-sac, and you tend to have between 16 and 25 permanent crew and 50-60 trainees. It can take up to 100 people at sea.
Oh my God, that is enormous. I thought you were going to say, I don't know, a permanent crew of 10 and maybe half a dozen trainees.
No.
So you've got up to 100 people, and they all need to be fed and watered and
Indeed.
Looked after, and safety obviously is number one.
Indeed, yes.
And I'm sure the first aid kit came out once or twice, but that's a lot of people.
It is a lot of people. The first aid kit, surprisingly, didn't come out very often. It looks very complicated when you look at them, but there's basically rules on how the whole ship is rigged and what each rope does and all that sort of things. And it's also designed so that when everything is tied up, everything's out of the way, nothing to trip on. But yes, part of the rules is everywhere down below, make sure you always store your things in the storage compartments, because if the ship moves, your stuff is going to move. So don't leave it laying around. They will not let even a little thing go. It's like they're going to be quite strict about not having anything down below lying around. The only thing that can potentially be lying around is towels hanging because they need to dry, because that's not dangerous if it falls. But everything else has to be stored away, and they'll come up and say, and they'll call out the berth, because each berth has a number, saying berth 17, 21, 33, go and clean up your stuff because it's a mess. And effectively, they will be quite strict with that, because that's the basics of safety. It's all the little things that sound...
Anything rolling around is going to hit you at 20 miles an hour. You're going to know about it.
Exactly. It doesn't matter whether it's small or big. If it hits you
at speed,
then it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
So the Norwegian sailors just put the point across by saying that you've got on the foresails, on the sails at the front of the ship, they've got some pulleys. When the ship tacks around, the pulleys just float through.
They go right and left and right.
Yeah, they float through for a second, and they tell you very early that they call those pulleys widowmakers, because effectively they are very heavy pieces of wood, and if they hit you, they can kill you. Yes. So look at it and say, yeah, see those? We call them widowmakers because they can brain you. Yeah. So same thing with everything that's down below. It doesn't look very big, but if it hits you, it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
And we're at sea, so we may or may not be able to go into port very quickly. So please don't do anything stupid.
Yeah, so obviously safety is like number one. Not just on deck, but what's going on below, as you say, what people are leaving out and about in their cabins.
Yeah, but it's below deck, on deck, and in the rigging, because you can also to maneuver the ships, you need to climb into the rigging, and obviously all the permanent crew will do it. As a trainer, you can do it. You don't have to, because obviously not everybody likes height, especially not everybody likes climbing a rigging on a dinky ladder while at sea. All of this has basic rules to tell you that's how to be safest in that environment. And yes, you've got these three environments, below deck, on deck, and in the rigging, that have slightly different rules to say. And generally, they're just a case of don't let anything fly around. Make sure that you know what you're looking at. Be aware of where the wind comes from. Because if the wind is pushing you back on the rigging, it's a lot safer than it's pushing you away. So all that sort of things.
Because if you think about it, being on board a boat is like no other experience, because it's you against Mother Nature. Wind can come up at any moment, change direction, and you've got a very, very big boat with a lot of people on board.
Yes, but because they are very big, they also have a lot of momentum. What this means is that they don't move easily. They need time to get going. Even when you've got changing wind and a gust of wind, they're not going to shift much. You will see some of the sails start flapping, but that's about it. And so compared to a small yacht, which can be quite buffeted in the wind, a large ship tends to be more stable, which is why they build those cruise ships so big, because the bigger it is, the less impact the sea has on it. But effectively, a large ship will be a lot more stable, and a sailing ship in particular, because the way sailing works is you've got equilibrium between the forces on the hull and the keel in the water and the forces of the wind in the sail. So it moves, but it's a movement that is fairly rhythmic most of the time, unless you're in the middle of a maneuver, but that you will know in advance. In that respect, there aren't that many surprises. Yeah, and you're not going to get a sudden change.
It's not going to affect a tall ship as much as it would as a small ship.
Yeah, it depends on the size of the ship, but effectively a large tall ship, the changes in the wind are unlikely to be fast and strong enough to really affect it, unless you're really in a storm. Basically, you've got safety harness. Normally, you don't wear them unless you go into the rigging where you can clip yourselves on in places. But as soon as you're in a storm, safety harnesses come out. Safety ropes come out as well. Basically, they put ropes along the deck so that you can latch onto them. Other than that, unless you're in a storm, then it's not going to move very much. Well, it's going to move up and down, but it's not going to move in an unpredictable way.
So what time of the year did you go on your trip?
Most of them in summer, because they were mostly around the Baltic Sea and the North Sea.
So how many trips have you done, Bruno?
I have to count now.
Oh, a lot.
No, at least 3 in the Baltic North Sea, 1 at Christmas in Tenerife, and that's the one I can think of. Yeah, I think that's about it. So
did you encounter any inclement weather on any of the voyages you were on?
Oh yeah. The first one I did, we had a bit of inclement weather in the strait between Denmark and Sweden, which is the only time I was sick on that ship. This is also when you learn that when you're sick on the ship, be sick away from the wind, not in the wind.
Yeah.
Yes, I've had a bit of inclement weather. Most trips I've done, we've had a day or two of slightly rough seas or slightly high winds. Then again, we also had a few days of absolutely nothing moving, and you got to see, which looks like a lake, and there's glass, and nothing's happening, and the ship's not moving because there's no wind.
So that's a bit of a day for a bit of, tidying up the ship, bit of housekeeping duties.
Oh yeah, you do a lot of housekeeping in that time, Absolutely, when all the mops will come out so that you clean the deck, all the brass cleaning equipment will come up, and that's where you realise that those ships have a lot of brass on board that need to be shiny. And, well, also every time you get close to a harbour, they're like, we need to look nice, let's polish the brass. And that's actually hard work and very dirty.
Can we talk about the living conditions and the rhythm of the days when you're on board? There's quite a few people on board, as in the people that are normally on board the ship, as well as all the trainees.
Correct.
So, did you have an individual cabin, or was it like 5 or 6?
No, you got a bunk in. So the ship I was on, it's basically a berth in a big cabin in below deck, the orlop deck. So basically, you've got about 60 people in the same big space. The way it's designed, you can separate different areas in the space. So what they do is they keep people in the same watch in the same area, so that, especially for the night watch, you can only wake up part of the ship. So yeah, effectively what happens is that when your watch starts, someone from the previous watch will come and wake up the whole watch if they are sleeping. Typically, the 3 watches in the night, they will come and wake up everybody. Then you go on deck, get a tea or something to wake up. If you were on the 8 o'clock watch and you woke up early enough, you may have had breakfast. If you didn't, you wouldn't have had breakfast. But you can. There's always a thing to find in the pantry if you're hungry and all that sort of things. But effectively, yeah, you start on watch, be on deck for 4 hours, then get off watch, and your day follows that rhythm. Then you've got the meal times that will come inside your day. So, and typically at meal times, priority is for the people on watch to come and have food first, because obviously they're working, so they need to be able to eat fast and come back up, and then everybody else. And yeah, sometimes you'll try to find a free shower, which can be a bit challenging occasionally.
So let's talk about what are the shower facilities like on board a tall ship?
Minimal.
Okay.
So you have some showers. There's also a number of them that are seawater showers.
I was going to ask you about that. I
Not-
didn't want to
not
show my ignorance, saying they can't all be freshwater. I mean,
No.
presumably some will be, but after 10 days of having a saltwater shower, that's not going to do you much good, is it?
No, occasionally you can have a freshwater shower as well, but those are in high demand, so it's sometimes easier to just have a saltwater shower just to get the grime off. And then yes, the day when you come into port, that's when you can be a bit more prolific with things like water and that sort of things.
So when you go on these tall ships then, are you told, okay, it's a bit like going on Ryanair, you can bring a bag no longer than this, and they give you a list of all the things you should bring?
They give you a list of the type of clothes you should bring, everything that's not clothes that you should bring, what will be provided on board. So effectively all the wet weather gear is provided on board, so you don't need to worry about that. So typically, I mean, change of clothes, t-shirts, enough for the duration of the trip. They're very specific about the luggage. Don't come with a suitcase, come with a duffel bag, because effectively storage space is limited.
Mm-hmm.
So you need something that can be folded.
Yeah, and you squeeze it.
You need something that can be squeezed, yes. But effectively, in those ships, you've got storage all over the place. In places you would never think of. And every little nook and cranny is used for storing something. Yeah, typically, well, the ship I sail most on, so Surland, with the way it's designed, you've got the main deck, you've got what they call the orlop deck below, which is where everybody sleeps, and you've got another deck below, which is all the storage for the food, for the everything you need, and you've got another special storage for all the sales equipment and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of little areas on the ship which are slightly out of bounds, which you will get into if you're on the high duty. Yeah, where everything else is stored. And then, well, yeah, the size of a single bed, roughly, with some storage. Sometimes it's under your bed, sometimes it's a locker on the side.
So you're literally just taking minimal stuff.
You're taking minimal stuff so that you can have a change of clothes every day that you're on board.
But you're not taking 5 paperback books and your iPad and God knows what else.
You might. you have to be able to carry it. The paperbacks, you might take one or two. I've taken a laptop on board. I've taken an SLR camera. So you can take a bit of stuff. Effectively, the first time I went, I took minimal stuff. And then you understand how the ship is designed. And yes, you can take a few things. But you also have to be careful that whatever you take has to be able to survive some basic knocks, because they will be stored somewhere and it will move. They're able to take knocks, or you're able to pat them so they don't get damaged.
Let's talk about catering on board. I mean, I'm a great lover of the TV show Below Deck. It's a shame that it focuses on all these crazy guests rather than the workings of a boat. You're catering for probably 100 plus people. Are there like 3 teams of kitchen crew? Because you're doing breakfast in the morning, you're doing breakfast in the afternoon and breakfast at night to keep the 3 shifts, and then you're doing the same for lunch.
Well, it's usually not 200 people, it's usually more like 70. And you're only doing 1 colour for each meal. The watch themselves will adapt their times. So effectively you got 1 breakfast at 7 a.m, 1 lunch on just after 12, and 1 dinner in the evening. And effectively it just means that the people who start their day at 12 will start it with lunch. Breakfast will happen right in the middle of the 8 to 12 watch. So people from the 12 to 4 that are already awake will go and have breakfast. Everybody else has breakfast at the same time. Same thing at lunchtime, everybody has lunch at the same time, and you just do 1 service. And effectively, it tends to be, a lot of it goes into the prep beforehand and the type of dish you're serving. So everything tends to be things that can be done. Big stew, that sort of thing, it can be done. You can do in a very big pot and whatever are a favourite, because they're basically easy to do. Just means that you've got a lot of potatoes to peel, but hey, you've got someone to do it.
So you want good old hearty food, that like a huge chilli, a huge curry, a huge stew.
Yes, yeah. You're feeding the masses, and it's like, and it will depend on the ship as well. In a Norwegian ship, you always have a lot of things like herring, and a big favourite as well is have some raw veg, like salad veg, like pepper and that sort of things, because you just have to cut them, put them on a plate, and you're done. And then everybody is responsible, once they've got their plate, they're responsible for bringing the plate back to the kitchen, so that the people in charge of the kitchen can then deal with it. And then effectively it means that the people who are on the food watch that day will prepare the food beforehand and then clean up everything, clean up all the plates afterhand.
And the trainees get involved on the food watch as well?
Absolutely, because the food watch is 1 permanent crew and then 3 or 4 trainees.
Oh, really? Oh, so you've got somebody sort of explaining how it's going to work and supervising, and then you've got the manpower.
So the cook, being the permanent crew member, is the one who knows what to cook, what we were going to do, and is able to organise the manpower and say, you're going to peel potatoes, you're going to do that, you're going to do that. And
do they normally do the provisioning for the whole trip? Because you're stopping off at places on the way, or is it just from A to B and then B back to A?
It's usually a set of A to B trips. So effectively, they don't necessarily come back to A. And effectively, most of the time, they will actually go around different parts of the world. So say if they do the summer in the Baltic Sea, they might start in Norway, then go down to Denmark, then go to Poland, then go to Finland. But every time, each leg is just A to B, and you don't stop. So you have to provision for the whole trip.
And would those trainees do a certain leg of it?
Yes.
Or constantly changing the trainees?
Every time you go into harbour, you're going to change the trainees. You're going to change refuel on everything. Some trainees will do more than 1 leg, so they will stay for longer. And as a trainee, what it means is that you need to be able to go to where the ship starts from and to go back from where it arrives, which sometimes gets some interesting Ryanair journeys.
So when you did your very first trip, cast your mind back. Was it more or less what you expected, or was there certain parts of it you thought, oh hell, I didn't think this was going to happen, or I wasn't prepared for this, or was it more or less what you thought it would be?
I say mixed. The first trip I did from Karlskrona in the south of Sweden to Kristiansand in the south of Norway, which is the hometown of the ship I was sailing on, I wasn't sure what it would be like, so I was like, I'm going to see. And yes, it was very much like what I expected. Okay, we're sailing on a very large ship, and it's quite cool to do that. I sort of knew that there was some work to do in the rigging on a large ship, but I wasn't sure what. And then I found myself up the mainmast of that ship. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Well, yeah, it's probably not something many people do. So yeah, it must have been incredible. Scary, but incredible.
What I was worried most about was how physical it would be. But as I said earlier, it turned out that whatever your level of skills, there's something you can do. And what I found is that, yeah, I might not be the strongest on board. I mean, but I found that I was reasonably agile in the rigging. So I ended up being one of the trainees that they would ask to go in the rigging more often, because they knew, A, I was happy to do it, and B, I could do it. But each person has their own strength. And the permanent crew understands that very quickly. So they will use that. If you're someone who's not very agile in the rigging, but you're very strong, guess what? You'll be on the big rope. A lot of it is also making sure that everybody is happy and consent to what they're doing. So everything can be done by the permanent crew. And effectively, there are some times when the sea's a bit rough and the trains are a bit green. The permanent crew are going to say, okay, well, we'll do that bit. Don't you worry about it. But I suppose that also depends on the type of ship you're on. I mean, we're always welcoming and trying to make everybody at ease. Others are less, probably more, I wouldn't say military in the way they run their ships. Yes, a bit, because some of them are military training ships. It does vary.
So do you get many women who go on these trips?
Oh, absolutely. So once again, it will depend on the ship. So I've sailed on British and Norwegian ships, and all of them tend to have a fairly mixed permanent crew, fairly close to 50-50. In terms of trainees, I mean, it depends who sign on, but it tends to be fairly mixed as well. And also mixed in terms of ages. As I say, you have any ages from teenagers to people in their 70s.
I mean, I can't imagine if we went online, this type of experience comes cheap. I should imagine it's quite expensive to do.
Price per day is about the same as the price of going on holidays to Crete, for instance, in a decent hotel. You're talking a few £100 a week, a bit more. I'm saying this, but I haven't looked at the price for 10 years, so it might have gone up. I was thinking that the first time I went, and then I did the math, and I was like, actually, I went on a ship for a week, I spent that amount of money. I would have probably spent the same amount if I had just gone laid on a beach or done any other type of holidays. The only way I would have done it cheaper is if I had gone camping. But other than that, I'd say it's probably equivalent to what you would pay if you went on holidays and stayed in a 3-ish star hotel.
So the money you pay is for the voyage, includes all your food and drink?
Includes all your food and drink, knowing that it's a completely dry ship at sea.
Yeah,
no
sense.
Alcohol whatsoever. That's one of the strongest rules that they have. Alcohol when you're in the harbour, fine. At sea, no alcohol whatsoever. So, drinks is usually water.
I mean, I'm not a particularly good sailor, but there must be people who get on that ship and then just, this is not right for me and my stomach. I mean,
yes.
I mean, I'm sure they've got some magic pills that will get you through it, but were there ever, on the excursions you did, were there any that people just said, no, I just need to get off at the first available stop and never set foot on a ship again? It must happen.
So it's happened once on one of the journeys I did. but not for that reason. So effectively, yes, with every single journey I've done on this ship, you've had some people who were ill. Most people choose to go on that ship, so they, even if they're ill, they're going to be like, I'll go to the end of it. And most people who've never been on one will do like me. They'll just do one short leg just to see that they are happy with it. But yeah, occasionally you have people who will be quite ill. They have some seasickness tablets that you can give you. One simple trick they give you is eat bread. It will fill your stomach, and it doesn't come back up very easily. So it's a good way to actually settle your stomach. Especially the Norwegian dry bread is quite good for that. Occasionally you have someone who will just be so ill they'll stay in their berth and like, okay, we'll do what we can, but until we get to harbour, there's not much we can do.
No.
There's one time when I've seen people want to be let off the ship, and that was because there was one voyage I did where a big group of the trainees were actually brought by an ONG that was working in the Balkans, and that was going to bring people from some of those countries that had been at war to do something different. What it means is that a number of the people on board were not really there because they choose to be there. It really didn't really resented, not so much the struggle with it being at sea bit. Some of them struggle with the very hierarchical, ordered way a ship like this works, and basically bristled at being given orders. So you're in very close quarters. Everybody depends on everybody else, and you have to trust the people who know how to maneuver the ship, who know how to run the ship, and it is done on a very hierarchical order. So captain has the last word, whatever, which is not necessarily something that everybody responds well to. But once you understand how those ships work, it makes sense so that there is a chain of command, because they want to achieve something specific and they need everybody to follow. The ships I sailed on were also very good at explaining what was happening. So you knew, okay, so we're going to do this, therefore we need to do this, this and that. Therefore, the first mate will issue that order at that time, that order at that time, and this is what we need to follow. And a lot of this, once you get it explained, you're like, okay, I understand why we're doing this. You need to be able and ready to say, okay, I'll listen to what you tell me and I'll just do it.
I mean, it is for the benefit of everyone's safety and well-being, but as you say, some people are just not great in that type of environment.
No. Yeah, so that particular time, we basically moored somewhere in Norway. We were going up the Norwegian coast along the fjords. Amazing way to see the fjords. And we moored in one of the fjords, and basically they took the dinghy out and brought some of the people to the closest harbour and told them, you got a train station here, you're free to go.
Wow. So what advice would you give to somebody who's listening to this and thinking, okay, I've listened to how it works, what to expect, what to take, what not to take. What advice would you give to somebody who thinks, I quite fancy having a go at that?
Do a bit of research beforehand. I was extremely lucky to have got this book I originally had, because it explained the basics of sailing on those ships, and it explained particulars of each ship. One of the things which may be difficult is to find the right information, because every one of them tends to have their own website and they're all different, and it's sometimes a bit difficult to find. So there's a bit of research to do beforehand. Yeah, I'd say check the length of each leg. Know that when they say we're going from A to B and it's going to take 2 weeks, it's going to take 2 weeks. So don't expect to have a stop in between. They will tell you where all the stops are. So start with a short one. So I started with a week. Sometimes you got some that are slightly shorter, but a week is a good start. If you've got medicine you need to take, make sure you've got enough to take on board. Same thing you would do for every holiday, to be fair. The Norwegian ship I sailed on, and I think the British one as well, once you register, they will send you a leaflet through the post that explains all of this. And also gives you, that has a cheat sheet on vocabulary on sailing, what each sail is called and all that sort of thing, which you will forget by the time you get there, but that's fine. Yeah, and then I'd say enjoy the view.
So Bruno, have you got any plans to do another trip?
I have no plans today. I'd love to do so, but I have no plans today. Yeah, one day.
But you definitely recommend it.
I absolutely recommend it. Absolutely, yes.
And it does appear to be one of those experiences of a lifetime.
Absolutely, and effectively, so when I was in my hometown, seeing those ships for the first time, I thought, that would be cool to sail on one of these. I put it at the back of my mind thinking, but it looks so unattainable at the moment, I don't know where to start. And then buying this book, I started thinking, maybe that's possible. But I still had it at the back of my mind saying, one day when I've got enough money, whatever. And eventually I say, no, stop this, I'm going to go on one. It was something that I had dreamed of for several years, and then suddenly finding myself on the deck of a ship saying, I'm no longer here as a visitor, I'm here as crew, or sort of trainee, nearly. That feels very different. It was the first time in my life where I looked at it and I thought, I've achieved a dream I had. And the first time you do this, whatever your dreams, the first time you achieve one of them, it is a very special feeling.
Oh my God, Bruno, that's the title of the podcast. Absolutely. Achieving your dream.
And sometimes they are easier to achieve than you think. You also need to be ready for the dream to turn into a nightmare if you don't like it. And basically that's where I try not to assume anything, which is very hard to do, obviously, because we've all seen the Pirates of the Caribbean and all that sort of things. Yeah, you got to take it thinking, okay, I'm not sure how things will work out, but I know that whatever it is, it will be an experience of a lifetime.
And you're going to be on that ship with people who know what they're doing. There's probably nothing going to happen that they haven't dealt with before.
Exactly.
Apart from maybe pirates, but...
You have a permanent crew. They've seen it all. They've seen the people not wanting to follow up on what they wanted them to do. They've seen the teenagers who thought they were stronger than everybody else. They've seen the rough weather. They've seen the people getting hurt and having to bring the emergency kit out. You'll be fine.
So the moral of the story is then, don't just leave your dream as a dream. Start looking for the information and try and turn it into a reality.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes the information is... Well, I was very lucky that the information happened to me in the form of this book, but the information is out there. You may have to spend a bit of time searching for it, but I would absolutely recommend it. One last thing on that, on this subject. One of the reasons why I choose a larger ship, because you can also... Those ships come in all sizes, from small fishing vessels to the very large clippers type ships. And one of the reasons why I choose a large ship, especially the first time, was that because you're part of a much larger crew, there is less pressure on you to be able to do things. The smaller the ship, the more you need to be able to do more things, and the more essential you become to running the ship. So if you're not too sure, go for a larger ship, because there's less expectation on you personally. There's an expectation on the group, but less on you personally. And then maybe try smaller ships later if you like it, if you feel like you understand what you're doing. But start with a larger one where you can be part of a larger group.
I think that's very sound advice. Yeah, absolutely. Bruno, I have to say, I didn't know where this podcast was going to go. I think this is absolutely fascinating. I can tell you here and now, I will not be going on a tall ship anytime soon. But the picture you have painted of the experience, the day-to-day life and the routine on board is absolutely fascinating.
Well, that's okay. You can go on one of them when they're at quay in a harbour.
That I have done. In Valencia, I have done that. and that was really interesting. But I have to say, I'm not a great sailor, but it's been so interesting talking about your experience on a tall ship. Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you. And the last little thing I will add is that it is really for everyone. You even have a British charity called the Jubilee Sailing Trust that has ships that are specially adapted for disabled people, where you can take a wheelchair anywhere on board, including in the rigging, where they have specially adapted equipment to help low vision people. And so most of them, you need to be able to stand on deck and do a lot of things, but some of those are adapted, so it really is accessible to most people. Just find one and go on the ship.
Give it a go.
Give it a go.
Bruno, thank you so much. This has been absolutely fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. I really did. I really didn't know anything about tall ships beforehand, and I think that was a really good introduction to the world of tall ships. So thank you for listening to our conversation, and if you'd like to tell your story, please contact me on allaboutyoupodcast@yahoo.com and let's get your story told.